Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to go through, check out some real Dynasty fantasy football trades. As always, make sure you're dropping a like on this video. Subscribe to the channel if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. And if you want to get your trades broken down, if you want to get your team broken down on a podcast, if you want to get access to my Dynasty rankings and all the premium content of all your favorite Dynasty Fantasy Football creators, find all of that on flockfantasy.com. When you sign up with promo code FLOCK, you're going to get 30% off any subscription, and yours truly will go through and break down your Dynasty team in a podcast. Quick side note, if you are a member of Underdog Fantasy and Flock Fantasy and use promo code FLOCK, make sure you are filling out the Google form in the Discord. That way you can go through and that way you can get your free merch, shipping all those out this next week. But I think that should be it. Let's go ahead and let's dive into this video. And our first trade that we're going to be looking at here is going to be a little boring, right? I mean, we're trading away Travis Etienne and Donovan Peoples-Jones for Chris Godwin, James Conner, and Nico Collins. First thing I want to say is, okay, James Conner is a running back I'm targeting. Primarily in underdog drafts where it's just for 2023, obviously. But there he's going as like a mid-running back 3. Now, it makes sense why James Conner would be going a little later in fantasy football drafts, whether it's Dynasty or redraft. And that if you're looking at Vegas lines right now for where the Arizona Cardinals are, I mean, you are expecting the Cardinals to be one of the worst teams, one of the worst offenses in the entire NFL this next season. I mean, that's pretty much consensus across all sports books here. Obviously, Kyler Murray is going to miss a large chunk of games. So while, yeah, we can be excited that James Conner is definitely a 3-down back, and he most likely is going to get both the red zone role as well as targets out of the backfield in Arizona this next season, if the offense is as bad as we expect it to be, you may not necessarily be in a spot where all of a sudden we can sit here and easily project James Conner to score a lot of fantasy points, in that he may not have any trips to the red zone. The Arizona Cardinals may just be horrendous. Now, I will say, yes, I'm drafting him on Underdog as a running back 3 for 2023 in particular. And there's actually a Dynasty trade that I really like later on in this video where we get James Conner. But in my mind, he is not a big enough piece for us to be willing to downgrade from Travis Etienne to Chris Godwin. In my mind, Travis Etienne is a borderline top 5 running back in Dynasty. I think he checks almost every single box that we are going to be looking for. And with Godwin, very similar to James Conner, he's going to be in one of the worst offenses in the entire NFL this next season. Both Conner and Godwin were drafted in 2017 in comparison to Travis Etienne drafted in 2021. So in my mind, it's going to be the Travis Etienne side of this deal. Donovan Peoples-Jones to Nico Collins doesn't really move the needle at all for me. Now, going over to our next deal, I have to be honest, I'm a little bit biased here, right? This is going to be Brock Purdy, someone that I am hoping is not the starting quarterback for the 49ers this next year. As you know, I'm hoping it's our guy, Trey Lance. So yes, I am biased for a 2024 first. In my mind, I could kind of understand why someone wants to go through and do this, right? Where they're sitting here going, okay, well, hell, the San Francisco 49ers, such a good spot, such a good situation in general for a quarterback where you have Deebo Samuel, you have George Kittle, you have Kyle Shanahan, you have Brandon Ayuk, you have a great offensive line, you have Christian McCaffrey. Trust me, I've been there. You know I'm the Trey Lance guy. I love this situation you have in San Francisco. But in my mind, you still have a decent amount of question marks when it comes to Brock Purdy, right? You have the overall health of Brock Purdy. You have, while yes, maybe you want to believe he is the starting quarterback in San Fran, you have a quarterback competition, okay? We don't know who it's going to be. We can't say with certainty which direction Kyle Shanahan's going to go with. And with Brock Purdy, you have such little team investment that even if he is the guy, if Brock Purdy were to fail, if Brock Purdy were to go out there and say, have a bad 4-game stretch, you could see the 49ers looking to make a switch. You could see the 49ers going and putting in Lance, putting in Darnold. It's not like Brock Purdy was a top 3 NFL draft pick. It's not like he's Trevor Lawrence, right? So in my mind, there are a decent amount of hurdles for Brock Purdy to overcome. And what's the real ceiling that you have here with Brock Purdy? Well, in my mind, it's not going to be that high, because from a fantasy football perspective, the 49ers may not be as good of a spot for a quarterback that's not going to run the football. Lance, I still think he himself actually has a decent amount of upside, but that's because of the rushing production that he would add. Brock Purdy's not going to run the ball, right? And if Brock Purdy's not going to run the ball, from a fantasy football perspective, while the 49ers are phenomenal from a real life situation standpoint, This is going to be a team that looks to run. This isn't necessarily going to be a team that wants to go through and have Brock Purdy drop back 650 times a game. So I don't necessarily think he has an extremely high ceiling in fantasy. I still think he has some hurdles to overcome. So I don't know why we would trade a 2024 first for him right now. Maybe once we actually get to the season and he is healthy, he is starting, then we can look to make that move. There's no reason to do it today. Now, going over to our next deal is going to be a Bijan Robinson trade. You know, we always have to throw a Bijan deal in here. It's going to be the 101, Derek Carr, Evan Ingram, and a second versus Justin Herbert, Pat Freiermuth, and Allen Lazard. So let's remove some of the smaller pieces, right? I mean, I think we can say maybe Evan Ingram in the second equals Pat Freiermuth and Allen Lazard. I'd rather have Freiermuth over Ingram. I'd rather have the 203 over Allen Lazard. Let's just remove them from this deal because at the end of the day, the main two pieces that we need to be looking at here are going to be Justin Herbert versus Bijan Robinson as well as Derek Carr. Now, you know I am a massive Bijan fanboy. I believe Bijan Robinson is the running back one overall in Dynasty. I believe Bijan Robinson is an immediate top 5 running back at the position in fantasy. And you kind of see this with underdog drafts. Bijan Robinson's going as the number 2 running back off the board today for 2023 drafts. Yes, he's going ahead of Taylor. He's going ahead of Eckler. He's going ahead of Barkley in 2023 drafts. I'm a massive fanboy. But at the same time, if you were to look at the running back versus quarterback landscape in Dynasty, for you to be able to go through and give you a quarterback that provides both an extremely high floor and ceiling for the long term, it is damn near impossible to get one of those guys. You are always going to be able to trade for a running back in Dynasty. To trade for a quarterback, it is a much more difficult task. For that reason, I'm probably going to go ahead and take Justin Herbert here. I want to bet on our guy, Bijan Robinson. Obviously, the expectations are through the roof. It is a little difficult, though. But, of course, if you actually want to get in a 2023 fantasy football draft today, y'all know we're drafting on Underdog literally every single day on the live stream on the main fantasy football channel. When you sign up to Underdog Fantasy with promo code FLOCK, you are going to get a 100% deposit match. That way it's free for you to go out there and hop into some Underdog drafts. And on top of this, you are going to get access to flockfantasy.com on a free trial. That way you can go check out all of my Dynasty rankings. That way you can go through and check out all of our premium content that we have there. So you can find the link to Underdog in the description. Make sure you use promo code FLOCK. Get into some drafts with us today and see if you want to take Bijan Robinson at 2 overall for these RBs. Now, going over to our next spot, we're going to be looking at a Jamar Chase trade where you're looking at Chase versus DJ Moore, Miles Sanders, the 106, which turned out to be Jahmyr Gibbs, and a future first. But now on the Jamar Chase side, you're getting a couple second rounders. So in my mind, if you were looking at a player like DJ Moore, he's been a wide receiver 3 for 3 straight seasons in a row. He's going to a team that was just the worst passing offense in the NFL since 2010. While I do believe the Chicago Bears will be the most improved passing offense this next season, they're still probably going to be pretty damn bad. I still expect DJ Moore to be a wide receiver 3 in fantasy this next season. So honestly, if you're looking at DJ Moore versus the second round picks, not going to be too big of a deal for me. If I'm looking at Jamar Chase versus Miles Sanders, the 106, aka Jahmyr Gibbs, and a future first, I mean, I don't necessarily think Miles Sanders is worth a future first. So it's like 2 first round picks plus a little bit extra on top. I would rather have Jamar Chase. I mean, you actually just had Corey going over there to flockfantasy.com and putting up his wide receiver trade chart, essentially saying, yeah, if you were going to trade away Jamar Chase, we need at minimum 3 future first round picks. I don't necessarily think we're getting that kind of value. I'm just going to hold on to the stud. Now, going over to our next trade, this is the James Conner trade we were talking about. Was actually a decent value, right? I mean, as we were saying, I like drafting James Conner on Underdog as a running back 3. If we were to buy him in Dynasty, I can't go through and pay the price point that we saw earlier in this video. However, with this one in particular, James Conner and a late 4th versus the 210, this is the price point we are paying for James Conner. That 210 is going to be a player like Jalen Hyatt, right? Where maybe it makes sense. Maybe you can convince yourself, okay, yeah, I'm a rebuilding team. I have James Conner. There's really nothing for me to do with him this next season. Why would I hold on to him just for his value to be nothing next offseason? I don't really want his points in our starting lineup now. You could see an owner convincing themselves to trade James Conner for that 210. But at the same time, on the other end of the spectrum, you could see an owner with the 210 going, hey, man, I'm ready to compete. I mean, hell, this late second, really not going to turn into anything, really not going to do anything for us this year either. Let's just go ahead and let's just trade it away for a running back that we can actually look to start right now. I really like this deal, probably for both parties. I'd probably lean on the James Conner side here. Now, going over to our next one, we're going to be looking at Mike Williams as well as Allen Lazard versus Tim Patrick, Hollywood Brown, a future second, and a third. So Tim Patrick actually would have been a wide receiver I'd have been excited about if they did not decide to select Marvin Mims. At the beginning of the offseason, it looked like Tim Patrick maybe was going to be in a decent spot if they traded away either Cortland Sutton or Jerry Jeudy. Well, it looks like they're holding on to both those players. Not only are they holding on to both those players, but they are also adding in a wide receiver in the second round this year. So Patrick, in my mind, really doesn't have any value. So you're going to be looking at Hollywood Brown at a second and a third versus Mike Williams and Allen Lazard. I'd rather have the future second and third round pick over Allen Lazard, even though we did just have a community article over there on Flog Fantasy, someone pitching on why you should go through and buy Allen Lazard. I'm not buying. I'd rather have the second and the third. And if we're looking at Hollywood versus Mike Williams, I mean, this next season, if you're looking at where they're going in underdog drafts, I mean, Mike Williams is getting a slight edge over Hollywood Brown in drafts for 2023. But if we think long-term here, I mean, Hollywood was drafted in 2019. He only stayed 3 years at OU. Mike Williams stayed 4 years at Clemson. He was drafted in 2017. So Mike Williams significantly older than Hollywood Brown. On top of this, if we look at the long-term outlook for these players, Quentin Johnston will eventually be the wide receiver one there in Los Angeles. With Mike Williams, with his contract, you really don't know what the long-term situation is there. I am confident in just saying, okay, well, in 2024, Hollywood Brown's going to be in a spot where presumably Kyler Murray is fully healthy, and at the same time, presumably DeAndre Hopkins is not on this roster, and he's going to be 3 years younger than Mike Williams. If you're looking at the expectations for 2023 in underdog drafts, they're going in a very similar range. So I'm going to take the Hollywood Brown side of this deal. Now, going over to our next deal, we're going to be looking at a Devonta Smith trade where it's Smith and Jahan Dotson versus Eckler, Paris Campbell, not worth anything, a couple seconds and a third. Okay, one thing that I really want to be stressing. You should not be able to trade 2026 picks in your Dynasty League. If I am a commissioner of a league, I am not letting anybody trade picks this far out in advance. There's no reason to do it. If you need to trade a 2026 pick to be competitive, you shouldn't try to be competitive. You are not good enough to be competitive if you need to go out to 2026 to start trading away picks. And all that's really happening is you are going to have one team that goes through, trades away all their future capital. And what's going to happen is a few key injuries, maybe 1 to 2 major busts, and all of a sudden you have one of the worst teams in the league with no rookie picks for the next 3 seasons. If we think about a timeline here, today it's May 19th. We are halfway through this offseason. We have another half of the offseason to go until we get to the start of the year. Then we have an entire football season to go in 2023. Then we have the entire 2024 offseason to go. Then we have the entire 2025 season to go. Then we have the entire 2025 offseason to go. Like, it is just so crazy to be trading away 2026 picks in my mind. You have to go through another 2025 season, then to get to the 2026 offseason. There's no reason for it. I am always scared when I see a Dynasty League where people are going through and selling their 2024 picks, 2025 picks, 2026 picks. Because what will that team truly look like in 3 years? If that Dynasty owner knows what they're doing, are they really trading away all their future picks for the next 3 seasons? So that's just a concern that I personally have. If we're looking at the value, definitely Devonta Smith is the side that I want here. I mean, I don't care about picks in 2026. In my mind, if I'm trading for a 2026 pick, hell, I don't know if that league's going to be around that long, to be honest, if it's allowing it. Now, going over to our next deal, we're looking at the 2024 first versus the 108. Now, apparently, this 2024 first is from the team that got last place over the past 2 seasons. So if you expect that it's an early first, I'm completely fine with you making this move, right? If you think you have a chance to get Caleb Williams, Drake May, or Marvin Harrison Jr., hell yeah, let's go ahead and let's get that future first. Now, our next deal, Khalil Herbert versus Elijah Moore. Personally, I think I'd probably prefer Khalil Herbert in redraft. But from a dynasty fantasy football perspective, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take Elijah Moore here. I mean, with Khalil Herbert, what's interesting is this is a running back that, while yes, has been hyper efficient from a per touch standpoint, and when given the opportunity has looked very good in Chicago over the past few seasons, we need to be realistic with ourselves as well and say, okay, well, this team has decided to go through and sign D'Onta Foreman this offseason and followed up by drafting Roschon Johnson in the 4th round this year. So if I had to break down the probability of which running back would be the starter in Chicago this next season, I would probably give Khalil Herbert like a 50% chance, Roschon Johnson like a 30% chance, and D'Onta Foreman like a 20% chance. It's a team where the starting running back role is not going to be that valuable because Justin Fields is going to vulture so many of those rushing touchdowns. Justin Fields is going to really monopolize the points in Chicago. So, yeah, I mean, I'm fine with Elijah Moore in the long term here in Dynasty. Now, going over our next deal, we're looking at Jalen Hurts in a future first versus Josh Allen. I think it's your personal preference. I mean, I'd probably take Jalen Hurts in the future first. I mean, if we're looking at a redraft perspective, I mean, give me Jalen Hurts. If we're looking at a dynasty perspective, I'd probably rather have Josh Allen. But if you're getting the future first, I think it makes sense. Now, our next deal, we're looking at Jefferson and Brock Purdy versus CeeDee Lamb and the 102. I think here you're going to have to go ahead and honestly take Lamb. I believe this is a 1 quarterback format. So it's not like Brock Purdy is that valuable. If I'd rather have CeeDee Lamb and Jahmyr Gibbs or Justin Jefferson, give me the Lamb side. But one quick side note, you better not be vetoing trades in Dynasty. The only time a trade should ever be vetoed if it's the most clear collusion you've ever seen. But I think that's all I have for you. Again, thank you so much for being a member of the flock and supporting the channel. If you have not done so already, go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. And if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football, you are going to love flockfantasy.com. Go get access to all our premium content and our rankings there. Use promo code FLOCK, so I'll break down your team in a podcast when you join. And then also, if you want to get in a draft today, you can find that on Underdog Fantasy. Link in the description as well. When you sign up for Underdog Fantasy, use promo code FLOCK. That way you get a 100% deposit match and our 2023 Dynasty rankings. But that's it. Really do appreciate you. Really hope you have a great day and really hope we get to see you in a video sometime soon.